Hey everyone, thanks for coming back. This is an original story from Hidden Revenge Family, and it took a turn you truly didn't see coming. Let's get into it.
The valet barely looked at me when I handed over the keys, which told me everything I needed to know about how the night was going to go. The driveway alone was wider than my old base in Virginia, lined with imported cars that looked like they'd never seen a grocery store parking lot. Inside the house, light spilled through floor-to-ceiling windows, bouncing off marble floors and glass tables that didn't seem built for anyone who actually lived. This was Megan's place, her victory lap, and apparently my front row seat to it. I paused just long enough to smooth the sleeves of my plain gray dress. Nothing fancy, nothing flashy. I'd promised Mom I'd come, and I kept promises even when they came wrapped in discomfort and overpriced champagne. The sound hit me first. Laughter that was a little too loud. Music that was expensive but forgettable. The kind of party where people leaned in close, not because they liked each other, but because they wanted to be seen liking each other. I stepped inside and conversations flickered as eyes moved over me, then past me like I was part of the furniture package. Megan spotted me almost immediately. She always did. She had that radar for things that didn't match her aesthetic. Her dress probably cost more than my car, and she wore it like a trophy, hair perfect, smile practiced. She crossed the room with a glass raised high already mid-speech. And this, she said, looping an arm through mine before I could react, is my little sister Sarah. Little. I'm older by 2 years, but she's always liked that word. She does. What was it again? Megan tilted her head, pretending to think. Oh, right, translation. Just the cutest thing. She spends her days with dictionaries while the rest of us run companies. A ripple of laughter rolled through the group. Polite, sharp, the kind that knew exactly who it was aimed at. I smiled because that's what you do when your sister turns you into a punchline in front of men who smell like money and women who nod too much. It's freelance, Megan added, waving her hand like she was dismissing a waiter. Very flexible, perfect for someone who doesn't need ambition. Someone clinked a glass. Another man leaned in and asked Megan about oil markets. I was still standing there, attached to her arm, like a handbag she didn't want to carry herself. She finally let go and turned back to me with a grin that looked warm until you knew her well enough. Oh, could you grab more wine from the kitchen, the good red? You're great at helping out. There it was. Not subtle, not accidental. The group laughed again, louder this time. Someone said family keeps you grounded like it was a compliment. I nodded because arguing would have made it awkward for them, and God forbid we make rich people uncomfortable. I walked toward the kitchen, passing a wall covered in framed magazine covers, with Megan's face splashed across them. Founder, visionary, power player, every title polished to a shine. In the kitchen, the staff moved like ghosts, quiet, efficient, invisible unless needed. I grabbed 2 bottles and turned around just in time to hear Megan's voice drifting in from the next room. She's happy, really, Megan was saying. Some people just aren't built for pressure. The pressure in my grip tightened around the bottlenecks. Not enough to break, just enough to feel it. I brought the wine back, set it down, and stepped aside. No one thanked me. No one noticed I'd returned. Megan launched into another story, this one about her historic memorandum with a Middle Eastern investment group. Numbers flew, names dropped. The room leaned in. This deal changes everything, Megan said. Hundreds of millions. It's about trust, cultural understanding. She glanced at me again, eyes flicking over like she'd forgotten I was there. Which is funny because Sarah here actually speaks some of the languages. Isn't that ironic? A man laughed and asked, So you help her with translations? Megan answered for me, Only when I'm feeling generous. More laughter. Here's the thing no one in that room understood. They thought the hierarchy was obvious, Megan on top, me somewhere near the coat rack. They thought confidence came from volume and intelligence needed an audience. They didn't know why I'd shown up. They didn't know why I stayed quiet. They assumed silence meant small. As Megan went on about boardrooms and projections, a waiter brushed past me, whispering an apology. Like we were equals. I almost laughed at that. At one point, Megan raised her glass and called for attention. The room hushed on command. To partnerships, she said, to vision, and to family, who remind us how far we've come. Her eyes landed on me again. Just long enough. Everyone drank. I didn't. I stood there surrounded by people who had decided who I was without ever asking, people who saw a simple dress and filled in the rest of the story themselves. And standing there holding nothing, I wondered how many times in life You can be completely underestimated before it stops being an accident and starts being a choice. Let me ask you something and be honest with yourself. Have you ever walked into a room knowing you were more qualified than anyone there, only to be treated like background noise because you didn't look the part they'd already written for you? Megan laughed at something someone whispered in her ear, and the party rolled on smooth and shiny on the surface. I stayed exactly where I was, unnoticed, listening, watching, letting the night show me exactly how it saw me. I set my empty glass down before anyone noticed it had stayed untouched, slipped past a cluster of men, arguing about margins, and headed toward the back hallway. My heels clicked once, twice, then stopped when the sound started pulling me somewhere else entirely. The smell of disinfectant came back first. Sharp, clean, nothing like Megan's house, but close enough to drag me 3 years backward without asking permission. Back then, I'd been sitting in a concrete office with no windows, a headset digging into my ear, translating in real time, while 3 other people waited on my words to decide whether someone lived through the night. The air conditioner rattled like it might give up at any moment. I was halfway through a sentence when my phone buzzed against the desk. Megan's name. I didn't answer it. Not at first. You don't break concentration in that room unless you want to explain yourself to people who don't care about excuses. She called again, then again. I stepped out, closed the door, and answered. Sarah, she said, already crying. Real crying. Or at least good enough. It's Mom. She's really bad. The doctors don't know how much time she has. The hallway tilted. That doesn't happen often to me, but it did then. What do you mean really bad? I asked. She didn't want to tell you, Megan said between sobs. She knows your job is important, but I can't do this alone. I remember staring at the concrete wall the way a crack ran through it like someone had tried to escape and failed. I asked one question, just one. How long? Silence. Then weeks. Maybe. That was all it took. I walked back into the room, handed off my station, and said words I'd never thought I'd say out loud. I'm requesting reassignment, effective immediately. They looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. But family was family. That's what we're taught. That duty doesn't end just because you wear a uniform. I was back in Virginia within days, trading secure briefings for hospital waiting rooms, trading classified clearance for coffee runs and pill schedules. Megan thanked me once, hugging me hard enough that I almost believed her. I don't know what I'd do without you, she said. I moved into Mom's house, took over appointments, night shifts, everything Megan said she couldn't handle because of work. Her company was at a critical stage, she said. She needed focus. I nodded. I always nodded. When Mom stabilized faster than expected, Megan smiled like it was a miracle. I took it as relief. I needed something flexible, something that wouldn't lock me into a schedule I couldn't control, so I picked up freelance translation. Remote work, clean, legal. Megan called it cute even then. Months passed, then a year. Mom never got worse. Not really. Some aches, normal things. I noticed. Of course I did. But when I asked questions, Megan brushed them off. Doctors can be wrong, she said. Be grateful. Gratitude is easy to weaponize. The memory faded as I leaned against the marble counter in Megan's kitchen, the present snapping back into place. I could hear voices drifting in from the dining room. Megan's, Mom's. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was looking for water. She still doesn't know, right? Megan asked. My hand froze on the cabinet handle. Mom sighed. No, and let's keep it that way. She'd go right back if she found out. Good, Megan said. I can't afford that. Things are finally moving. I didn't breathe. What about the scans? Mom asked. We staged them, Megan said without hesitation. A friend of a friend. Nothing illegal. Just selective information. My stomach dropped slow and heavy like an elevator with a cut cable. You worry too much, Megan continued. She's useful here, and she likes feeling needed. Mom didn't argue. That part hurt more than the words themselves. I stepped back quietly, my pulse steady, in a way that surprised me. Shock does that. It organizes you, makes everything sharp and clean. They hadn't just lied to me. They'd calculated me, mapped out my sense of duty, and pressed exactly where it would give. I didn't confront them. Not then. Confrontation is emotional. I didn't feel emotional. I felt informed. That night after everyone went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open. Old habits came back fast. Patterns, cross-checks, timelines. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for truth. Megan's company filings were public. Sloppy too. Press releases painted growth. The numbers underneath told a different story. Cash flow problems, short-term loans stacking up. Desperation dressed as expansion. The Middle Eastern deal wasn't a victory lap. It was a life raft. The more I looked, the clearer it became. Megan hadn't pulled me back because she missed me. She pulled me back because she needed me close, compliant, and quiet. In the morning, I made Mom breakfast like always. Eggs, toast, coffee light sugar. She smiled at me over the table like nothing had happened. "Did you sleep okay?" she asked. "Fine," I said. And it was true. I'd slept better than I had in months. Megan breezed in late, talking into her phone, already running the world before noon. She ended the call and glanced at me. "Oh, I forgot. I might need you to translate some documents later. Important ones." "Sure," I said. Easy, neutral. She smiled satisfied and went upstairs. I cleaned the dishes slowly, letting the quiet settle. They thought they had moved me into a smaller life. They thought they'd shrunk me down to fit the role they needed filled. What they didn't understand was that I hadn't stopped being who I was. I'd just changed uniforms. I opened Megan's folder without sitting down the way you do when you already know you won't like what you're about to read. She dropped the stack of documents on the kitchen island like it was nothing, leather binder embossed logo the whole performance. "These need to be translated cleanly," she said. "No creativity, just accuracy. Accuracy. That word always sounds noble until someone uses it like a leash." "What are they?" I asked. "Due diligence," she said too fast. "Background materials for the investors. You wouldn't understand the numbers anyway." She smiled when she said it. A casual smile, the kind that assumes agreement. I flipped the first page and saw immediately this wasn't normal translation work. Not press releases, not marketing fluff, internal memos, risk assessments, security annexes. The kind of documents that don't get handed to freelancers unless someone is either careless or desperate. "Where did these come from?" I asked. Megan rolled her eyes. "Contacts. Just translate." I kept my face neutral and nodded. Years of briefings had trained me well. When someone wants you compliant, the worst thing you can do is let them see resistance. I took the binder upstairs into the guest room that had quietly become my office. Laptop on the desk, door closed. I didn't lock it. That would have looked suspicious. The first few pages were straightforward. Corporate structures, ownership shells. Then the language shifted. Government phrasing, compliance clauses that referenced programs Megan's company had no legitimate access to. My hands moved faster, cross-referencing names, dates, acronyms. This wasn't just financial desperation. This was fraud with a view. I pulled up public records alongside the documents. Megan's company had applied for several contracts it wasn't eligible for. Somehow, approvals had still come through preliminary stages. The signatures authorizing access caught my eye. Mine, not my real signature, but close enough that someone unfamiliar with my writing might believe it. A careful imitation, practiced. I sat back, letting that land without emotion. Emotion wastes time. Downstairs, I heard Megan pacing on a call. Her voice sharp. "No, it's fine. She's doing it now. She owes me." I scrolled further. There it was. A security clearance addendum attached to the financial package translated into Dari. Sensitive terminology. Diplomatic phrasing that could easily be misused if taken out of context. Whoever sent this to the investors wanted them to believe Megan's company had authorization it absolutely did not. I translated exactly what was there. No smoothing, no corrections. I flagged nothing. When I brought the binder back down, Megan barely looked up. "Done." "Yes," I said. She flipped through a few pages without reading them. "See, easy. I don't know why you make such a big deal about your old job. This is real pressure from someone whose idea of stress was a delayed wire transfer." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "And listen, if anyone asks you, helped with some language support, that's it. Don't complicate things." I met her eyes. Of course. She smiled again, satisfied, and went back to her call. That night after the house went quiet, I copied everything. Not illegally, just thoroughly, every version, every metadata trail. I wasn't building a case. I was mapping a system. Megan's empire wasn't cracking from one bad deal. It was hollow. Debt rolled forward to hide losses. Investors fed half-truths wrapped in impressive vocabulary. And at the center of it all, a belief that no one would ever look closely enough. She believed wrong. The next morning, she cornered me by the coffee machine. "I need one more thing." She slid over a thin packet. Smaller, heavier. Translate this priority, she said. It's confidential. I opened it and felt something cold settle in my chest. These weren't corporate documents. These were security protocols. Language frameworks tied to regional operations. Information that should never be handed to private investors. This isn't translation work, I said carefully. Megan's smile disappeared. You don't get to decide that. This crosses lines. She leaned in voice low. Don't act like you're special. You left. You're not important anymore. I closed the folder. Then find someone else. Her jaw tightened. For a moment, I saw panic flash behind her eyes. Just for a second. Do it, she said. Or don't pretend you care about this family. Family, another leash. I took the packet upstairs without another word, translated it cleanly, perfectly. No additions, no omissions. Then I saved a copy and stored it somewhere Megan would never think to look. By the time I handed it back, she was already on edge. Calls unanswered, messages piling up. The deal was tightening around her like a clock. 2 days later, an email hit my inbox from an address I didn't recognize. Subject line security concern. It was forwarded to my former supervisor. Attached were screenshots, messages, carefully selected excerpts that painted a clear picture of misconduct. My name sat at the center of it. The accusation was simple. I'd mishandled classified material, shared sensitive information outside approved channels. It was clean, convincing, and completely fabricated. Within hours, my access was formally terminated, not suspended. Terminated. No appeals, no clarifications. Megan found me in the living room that evening, phone pressed to her ear, eyes bright. They're tightening reviews everywhere, she said, covering the receiver. It's chaos. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't ask what I'd heard. I nodded and kept my voice even. Sounds stressful, she smirked. You wouldn't know. As she turned away, I checked my phone. Another email came in. This one from an anonymous sender. You should have stayed quiet. I deleted it without replying. Because by then I understood exactly what Megan had done. She hadn't just used my skills. She'd tried to erase my exit. Cut off my options, make sure I stayed exactly where she wanted me. The problem was she assumed I'd panic. I didn't. I adjusted. I folded my laptop shut, slid it into my bag, and walked toward my mother's room before the silence in the house had time to settle into something heavier. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, television murmuring in the background, a shopping catalog spread across her lap, like a secret she didn't plan to keep. When she saw me, she smiled the way she always did when she wanted things to stay calm. Did you eat? She asked. I'm fine, I said and closed the door behind me. She noticed that. Mothers always do. What's wrong? She said, already bracing herself. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't pace. I stood still and kept my hands visible like this was a conversation that could go badly if I wasn't careful. Were you ever actually sick? I asked. Her smile didn't disappear. It thinned. What kind of question is that? She said. Answer it, I said. She sighed and looked away, eyes landing on the catalog again. You worry too much. Megan said the scans were staged, I said. She said you knew. That did it. My mother's shoulders dropped just a little. Not guilt, fatigue. She's under so much pressure, Mom said. I didn't think you needed to know every detail, I repeated. You lied to pull me out of my job. She waved her hand like I was exaggerating. You were gone all the time. It wasn't healthy. What wasn't healthy, I said, was making me think you were dying. She stood up then, defensive energy snapping into place. You're being dramatic. I laughed once. Short, dry. You taught me not to be. Her eyes hardened. You don't understand what Megan's built. She needs support, she needs stability, and I don't. She crossed her arms. You're adaptable. You always have been. That word landed harder than any insult Megan had thrown at me. Adaptable. As if that excused everything. I took a breath. She forged my signature. Mom frowned. She wouldn't. She did, I said. And she sent an anonymous report to my supervisor. I'm done. Completely. Mom's mouth opened then closed. The television kept talking, some cheerful host selling a vacation package. She said you were reckless, Mom said finally. That you were going to get yourself in trouble anyway. I stared at her. So you chose to believe her. She's my daughter, Mom snapped. So am I. The room went quiet in a way that felt permanent. Mom broke eye contact first. You always took risks, she said. Megan plans. She builds. You react. I nodded slowly. And Dad? Her head snapped up. What about him? You sold his things, I said. The medals, the letters, she looked away again. They were just sitting there. You sold them to buy her a car. Silence. I needed to help her maintain appearances, Mom said. People expect a certain image. I thought about my father, his careful handwriting, the weight of his service ribbons in my palm when I was a kid. I felt nothing now. Not anger, just a clean break where something used to be. I'm not helping anymore, I said. Mom scoffed. You don't have a choice. I looked at her, then really looked. Not as my mother, as someone who had made a series of decisions and wanted me to carry the consequences. I always have a choice, I said. She laughed sharp and dismissive. You think you can walk away from family? Yes, I said. I think I already did. Her face changed then. Fear slipped through the cracks. Megan's deal closes soon, she said. Don't do anything to ruin it. I nodded. I won't. It wasn't a promise. That night, Megan cornered me in the hallway, eyes bright with something that looked like victory. I heard from Mom, she said. You had a little meltdown. I kept walking. She followed. Just so you know, Megan added, if you try anything stupid, I have proof you mishandled sensitive material. Plenty of it. I stopped and turned to her. You already used that. She smiled. I can always find more. I met her gaze. You should be careful with threats. She leaned in close. You should be grateful I let you stay. Grateful. Again. The email came the next morning. Subject notice of termination. Immediate effect. It wasn't from the government. It was from the small consulting firm I'd lined up as a fallback. Megan's anonymous complaint had reached them too. Risk management. Zero tolerance. I forwarded it to myself and closed the laptop. Mom found me packing later that afternoon. Where are you going out? I said. You're being selfish, she said. After everything we've done for you. I zipped the bag. You did this for yourselves. She blocked the doorway. If you leave now, don't come back. I looked at her. That was the plan. She stepped aside. I walked past Megan on my way out. She was on the phone laughing, talking about timelines and closing dinners. She caught my eye and smirked. Told you, she mouthed. I didn't respond. By the time I reached my car, my phone buzzed again. A message from a number I didn't recognize. You really should have stayed useful. I deleted it and drove away without looking back at the house. The road ahead was clear, quiet, exactly the way I needed it. Because once everything you thought was solid turns out to be a transaction, you stop pretending loyalty is owed to people who only value you when you're convenient. I adjusted the collar of my jacket in the hotel elevator, watching the numbers light up as it climbed my reflection flat and unremarkable in the mirror. That was the point. Blend, observe. Don't register as a variable. The Sterling Hotel smelled like polished wood and money that moved fast. The lobby buzzed with quiet urgency, the kind that comes from people who know time is expensive and mistakes are unforgivable. Security stood a little straighter than usual. Not obvious, but noticeable if you knew what to look for. Megan's event had taken over the main conference floor. Banners with her company's logo lined the walls, strategic partnership signing printed in clean, confident font. She liked words that implied permanence. I checked in at the desk under my own name. No titles, no credentials, just Sarah Miller. The ballroom doors were already open. Inside tables were set with military precision disguised as luxury. Translators sat along one-wall headsets, neatly arranged, posture stiff. Most of them were good. A few were nervous. None of them knew what they were actually translating. Megan stood near the front, laughing too loudly, holding court with the investors. She wore a tailored suit this time, serious, global. She caught my eye for half a second, then looked through me like I was an inconvenience she'd already solved. I took a seat near the back, close enough to hear, but far enough to be ignored. Exactly where Megan liked me. The Middle Eastern delegation arrived together, calm, unreadable. They scanned the room the way professionals do, taking inventory without appearing to. Megan swooped in, hand outstretched, smile locked in place. She launched straight into small talk, then without warning decided to show off. I took the liberty of learning some Dari, she said brightly, to show respect. That got attention. Investors leaned in, translators stiffened. She spoke, slowly, confidently, wrong. Not just an accent issue. She used a term reserved for condolence in a context meant to signal cooperation. The room cooled immediately. One of the men frowned. Another exchanged a glance with his colleague. Megan didn't notice. She kept going, digging the hole deeper with every syllable. I watched the misunderstanding unfold in real time, the way tone shifted, shoulders tightened, eyes hardened. This wasn't a minor slip. This was diplomatic disrespect. The lead investor interrupted her voice, controlled but sharp. He responded in Dari, fast-clipped. The assigned translator hesitated, missed nuance, softened words that should not have been softened. Megan laughed nervously. Of course, she said. I'm sure there's a translation issue. She looked around, panicking now, and her eyes landed on me. There, she said, pointing. Her. She's the translator. I didn't move. Megan's voice rose. Sarah, fix this. Security shifted. Heads turned. The investors looked annoyed. I'm not on the schedule, I said calmly. Megan's smile collapsed. Don't be difficult. The lead investor said something else, louder this time. The air in the room thickened. People started checking phones. This was unraveling. Then the doors at the back opened. Conversations stopped, not because anyone announced it, but because the room sensed something change. A small group entered, unflashy, controlled. The man in front wore a dark suit that fit like a uniform even without the insignia. 4 stars sat invisible on his shoulders. General Harrison didn't look around for approval. He took in the room in one sweep, eyes sharp, posture exact. He nodded once to the security lead, then stepped forward. Megan froze. This was not part of her plan. The general approached the table, expression neutral. I'm here to observe, he said. His voice didn't carry. It didn't need to. Megan rushed to him, hand extended. General Harrison, what an honor. I didn't realize I'm aware, he said, cutting her off. Proceed. She swallowed and turned back to the investors, trying to recover. As I was saying. She tried Dari again. It was worse this time. The lead investor pushed his chair back slightly. A signal. One of his aides whispered in his ear. Megan's face flushed. This is ridiculous, she snapped. The translation is wrong. She did this. She pointed at me again, harder. Security glanced at the general. He didn't look at me. Not yet. Ma'am, he said to Megan. Control your tone, she bristled. With respect, General, my company is under review, he said flatly. That landed. The room held its breath. Megan laughed too sharp. That's absurd. The general turned his head, slightly, eyes finally finding me. Just a glance, measuring. Is she your translator? He asked Megan. She used to be, Megan said quickly, before she left real work. The general's gaze stayed on me. And now I stood, slowly, no rush. No apology, I'm unaffiliated, I said. One of the investors spoke again, anger clear now. The translator stumbled. The message came through broken. This was spiraling. Megan snapped. This is her fault. She sabotaged this. Remove her. 2 security officers started toward me. I didn't look at them. I looked at the general. He raised a hand. They stopped. Let her speak, he said. Megan's mouth fell open. You can't be serious. The general didn't respond to her. If you understand, Dari, he said to me, clarify. I could have translated the sentence, smoothed it over, bought Megan time. I didn't. I took 1 step forward and spoke 5 words, quietly, old phrasing, the kind that doesn't exist in textbooks. The room went silent. The lead investor stiffened. His aide's eyes widened. The general's face drained of color. He straightened instinctively, heels clicking together, posture snapping into place. He brought his hand up in a precise formal salute that hadn't been casual in decades. Welcome back, he said. Colonel Miller. No one breathed. We've been looking for you for 3 years, he added. Megan stared at me like the floor had dropped out from under her. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The silence didn't feel dramatic. It felt procedural, like a system waiting for the correct input. General Harrison lowered his hand and looked at me the way people do when a file finally opens and everything makes sense at once. Not surprise, recognition, the kind that rearranges a room without anyone moving. Megan laughed, a thin sound that cracked halfway out. That's not funny, she said. She's not Colonel Miller, the general said again, slower this time. If you're able, please confirm. I nodded once. Confirmed. He exhaled through his nose, a controlled release. You went dark after Kandahar. I followed orders, I said. You followed conscience, he replied, then turned to the room. For clarity, Colonel Miller is not and has never been a freelance translator. Megan took a step forward. This is a mistake. She quit. She washed out. The general didn't look at her. She architected the language protocols your firm attempted to present today. That sentence landed harder than anything else. It wasn't loud. It didn't accuse. It just placed facts where denial couldn't reach them. One of the investors leaned toward his aide and spoke quickly in Dari. This time I didn't translate. I didn't need to. His tone said enough. Megan's face shifted through confusion, anger, and something like calculation. "You're exaggerating her role," she said. "She did clerical work." "Clerical work doesn't save units," the general said. Her 5-word verification prevented a friendly fire incident that would have wiped out an entire convoy. The lead investor stood. "You allowed us to be briefed with unauthorized material." Megan turned on him. "That's absurd. We had approval." The general held up a folder. "These approvals." He opened it and slid out copies. The signatures stared up from the page. "Mine. Forged." Megan's voice dropped. "Those are valid. They are not," the general said. "They are criminal." The room began to change shape. Chairs shifted. Phones came out. People started calculating distance from Megan like she was a hazard. She pointed at me, handshaking now. "She did this. She handled the documents." I met her eyes. "I translated exactly what you gave me." The general turned to me. "Did you authorize any access on behalf of her company?" "No," I said. "Did you ever represent yourself as acting in an official capacity after your reassignment?" "No." He nodded once. "That aligns." Megan's voice rose. "You're ruining everything over a misunderstanding." "This isn't a misunderstanding," the general said. "It's a pattern." He looked at the investors. "This signing is suspended effective immediately." The lead investor didn't argue. "We withdraw." That was it. No shouting, no threats. Just a clean decision. Megan's mouth opened then closed. She tried again. "You can't do this. We're days away from closing." The general finally faced her fully. "Your timeline is irrelevant." Security approached, not me this time. Megan backed up a step. "This is harassment." "Ma'am," the general said evenly. "You are being referred for investigation related to fraud, forgery, and unauthorized access to defense materials." Her eyes flicked to me. "Say something." I didn't. The translators along the wall sat frozen, headsets untouched. One of them looked at me with something close to awe. I ignored it. The general turned back to me. "Colonel, are you willing to clarify the Dari exchange that initiated this escalation?" "Yes," I said. I addressed the investors directly, choosing words that carried weight, without softening truth. I corrected Megan's phrasing. I explained the term she misused and why it mattered. I kept it precise. No flourishes. The lead investor listened, jaw tight. When I finished, he nodded. "Your correction is appreciated. The deception is not." He gathered his papers and left with his delegation, steps measured. Megan watched them go like someone watching oxygen disappear. She spun back to the general. "You owe me an explanation." He shook his head. "No, you owe the government several." 2 officers stepped closer. Megan's voice broke. "Mom knows people. This won't stand." The general's tone didn't change. "That will be evaluated." As they guided her aside, she twisted toward me, fury and disbelief colliding. "You think you've won?" I considered that. "No," she laughed hysterically. "You destroyed your own family." I shrugged. "You already did." The ballroom thinned quickly. Sponsors vanished. Staff pretended not to see anything. That's how power behaves when it realizes it picked the wrong side. The general motioned for me to walk with him toward a quieter corner. "You could have stopped this earlier." "I tried," I said. He nodded. "You were blocked." "Yes." He studied me. "Why stay quiet tonight?" "Because truth holds better when it speaks." "Last," I said. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Still efficient." He handed me a card. "Plain, no rank. We'd like you back." "I'm not looking for a desk," I said. "We aren't offering one," he replied. "We're offering purpose." I glanced toward the doors where Megan had disappeared. "You already have it." "We need experience," he said. "And judgment." I slid the card into my pocket. "I'll consider." He nodded. "You always do." Security passed by with Megan between them. She stopped when she saw his face, pale, makeup cracked. "Tell him," she demanded. "Tell him this is a mistake." I looked at her. "I told you to be careful with threats." She stared like she didn't recognize me. The general turned away, conversation over. The hotel staff began resetting the room like nothing had happened. Chairs sliding back into place, banners still hanging, but suddenly meaningless. I stood there for a moment, the noise returning in pieces. Phones ringing, shoes clicking, people pretending this was just another delay. I checked my phone. No messages from my mother. None from Megan's contacts. The silence felt earned. I took a breath and walked toward the exit, not hurried, not triumphant, just aligned. When you spend years being treated like background, you learn something useful. You learn how rooms really work. And when they finally turn to look at you, you make sure you're saying exactly what needs to be said. I stepped back into the ballroom as if I'd forgotten something, because that's when people tell you the truth. When they think the moment has passed and the damage is contained. Megan was seated at a side table, shoulders rigid, jaw set, flanked by two officers who looked bored. Her phone sat face down in front of her, vibrating every few seconds. Each buzz landed like a reminder she could no longer control. General Harrison stood near the podium, speaking quietly to a man in a dark suit I recognized from oversight briefings. Legal. The kind of legal that doesn't raise its voice, Colonel the General said when he saw me stay. I stayed. He turned back to the room and spoke clearly, not loudly. For the record, this event is concluded. Any materials distributed today are subject to immediate review. People slowed their movements. No one left yet. They wanted to hear what came next, without admitting it. Megan pushed her chair back and stood. "You're making a spectacle," she said. "This can be resolved privately," the man in the dark suit responded before the general could. "Private resolution requires private mistakes." This was neither. He held up a tablet and connected it to the screen behind the podium. A clean interface appeared. Dates, file names, access logs. "Ms. Megan Miller," he said, "your company accessed restricted language frameworks on 12 separate occasions." Megan scoffed. "That's not possible." "It is," he said, "because you used Colonel Miller's credentials." The room leaned forward without moving. "That's a lie," Megan said quickly. "She handled translations." "She had access." The man tapped the screen. "She had access. You did not." A log expanded. My name appeared once. Megan's appeared everywhere else. He continued. "You attempted to pass these frameworks off as proprietary assets during investor briefings." One of the sponsors muttered something under his breath and stepped away from Megan like she was radioactive. Megan turned to me. "Tell them I didn't know." I met her eyes. "You coached me on what to translate." She stared stunned. "You said you'd stay out of it." "I said I'd translate accurately." The general folded his hands behind his back. "Colonel Miller designed those frameworks to prevent exactly this scenario." Murmurs spread. Someone whispered, "She built it?" The man in the dark suit nodded. "She is listed as principal architect." Megan laughed high and brittle. "So what?" "That doesn't make it illegal." "No," he said. "The forgery does." He tapped again. A scanned signature filled the screen. Mine. Then the comparison. Stroke mismatches. Pressure variance. Timing differences. "This signature was forged," he said. "Multiple times." Megan's color drained. "You can't prove that." "I can," he replied. "And I will." One of the investors stepped forward, anger no longer contained. "You represented government alignment you did not have." Megan tried to pivot. "That was a misunderstanding caused by translation errors." I spoke then, not loud, not dramatic. "Your term choice implied a condolence pact." "That's not a translation error." The investor nodded sharply. "Exactly." He turned to the man in the dark suit. "We are withdrawing all capital, immediately." Another sponsor followed suit. Then another. Each step back widened the space around Megan until she stood alone. She spun toward me, voice shaking. "You planned this." "I didn't," I said. "I documented it." She looked to the general. "You can't let her do this." The general's expression didn't change. "She didn't do anything. You did." Two agents approached. Megan backed up a step. "This is insane." "Ms. Miller," the man in the dark suit said, "you are now under formal investigation. Please remain seated." She laughed again, but this time it didn't sound like confidence. "My lawyers will tear this apart." He nodded. "They're welcome to try." Her phone buzzed again. She grabbed it, desperation creeping in. "This is harassment." The general raised a hand. "Your phone, please." She hesitated, then handed it over like it weighed 100 pounds. The screen behind them shifted again. This time emails. Subject lines flashed by. Anonymous complaints. Timed releases. The sender addresses were blurred, but the routing wasn't. "Your report to Colonel Miller's supervisor originated from your home IP," the man said. "You attempted to neutralize a risk you created." Megan stared at the screen, mouth open. "That doesn't mean it means," the general said calmly. "You tried to destroy a career to protect a lie." The room felt smaller now, heavier. I thought about my mother then, and how quiet she'd been. How easy it was for her to step aside and let this happen. The man in the dark suit turned to me. Colonel, for completeness, did you ever consent to your credentials being used by your sister? No, I said. Did you receive any compensation from her company? No. Did you benefit from this arrangement in any way? Oh. He nodded. Thank you. Megan's voice cracked. She lived in my house. I shrugged. That wasn't compensation. The general addressed the room one last time. Any ongoing collaboration with Ms. Miller's firm is suspended pending investigation. That was the sentence that ended everything Megan had built. Not because it was dramatic, because it was final. Security moved closer. Megan looked around wildly, searching for someone to intervene. No one did. As they guided her toward the exit, she twisted back to me. You think this makes you better? I didn't answer. Because the truth was simple. I hadn't unmasked her. She'd done that herself. I just stopped looking away. The screen went dark. Conversations resumed in fragments. People checked schedules, made calls, repositioned themselves as if gravity had shifted and they needed to adjust. The general leaned toward me. You okay? Yes, I said. He nodded. Good. The man in the dark suit handed me a slim folder. You may want this. Inside were copies of everything, clean, organized, the kind of record that ends arguments before they start. I closed the folder and held it at my side. Megan's voice echoed faintly from the hallway, sharp with protest, then cut off. The room exhaled. I didn't stay to watch it reorganize itself around a new center. I already knew how that worked. I didn't leave the hotel right away. I stood near the edge of the lobby where people assumed I was staff or security adjacent, the kind of presence you don't question. Phones kept ringing. Names that mattered 10 minutes ago suddenly didn't. My phone buzzed once. A text from James. They're here. Conference room B. I walked down the hall without urgency. The room smelled like coffee that had been reheated too many times. James stood when I entered, suit crisp, expression calm, in that way lawyers practice until it becomes real. Everything went according to expectation, he said. I prefer as planned, I replied. He slid a folder across the table. Not thick, focused. The kind of folder that only exists when someone has already done the math. These are the outstanding obligations tied to Megan's company, he said. Short-term loans, bridge financing, private notes, all past due. I flipped through the pages. Familiar names, shell entities, interest rates designed to squeeze, not support. You acquired them quietly, James continued. Through the holding company we discussed. Yes. No direct link to you, he said. On paper, good. He hesitated, then added. Your mother's name appears on some of the collateral documents. I didn't react. The house, yes. The house where I'd folded laundry, where my father's medals had once been kept in a drawer like they mattered. James watched my face carefully. Once the investors withdrew, the default clauses triggered automatically. I closed the folder. So we wait. We don't need to, he said. The notices are already sent. Right on cue, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number, I answered it without greeting. What did you do? Megan's voice cracked through the line. I listened, I said. You're behind this, she snapped. The banks won't talk to me. That's because they talk to someone else now. There was a sharp inhale on the other end. You don't have that kind of money. I do, I said. You just never bothered to ask. She laughed hysterical. You're bluffing. I nodded to James. He slid another document across the table and tapped a line with his pen. Tell her, he said quietly. You leveraged the house, I said into the phone. Against debt you didn't understand. That debt belongs to me now. Silence. Then Mom said, you wouldn't do this. I smiled faintly. She also said she was sick. Megan's voice dropped. You're destroying our family. I leaned back in the chair. No, I'm closing accounts. She hung up. James exhaled. She'll contest. She always does. She'll say you manipulated her. She manipulated herself, I said. I just stopped buffering the consequences. We left the hotel separately. Clean lines. No overlap. By the time I reached my car, the sun had dipped just enough to throw long shadows across the pavement. My mother called as I started the engine. Sarah, she said, voice trembling. We need to talk. I'm driving, I said. Your sister is in trouble. Yes, she says you're taking the house. I am, she cried then, loud, uncontained. You can't do this. This is our home. It's collateral, I said. You're punishing us. I watched traffic move ahead of me, steady and predictable. I'm enforcing terms you agreed to. She sobbed harder. After everything we sacrificed for you, I thought about nights in concrete rooms, missed holidays, calls I didn't make. You didn't sacrifice, you spent. Her voice sharpened. Where are we supposed to go, I hear? There are nice condos, I said. Megan likes appearances. She gasped like I'd struck her. You're cruel. No, I said. I'm done negotiating with people who confuse guilt with currency. She hung up. I drove past the old neighborhood once out of habit. The house looked the same from the outside. White trim, perfect lawn, a monument to choices that assumed permanence. It wouldn't change hands violently. No locks broken. No shouting matches on the lawn. Paperwork would do the work quietly the way it always does when power shifts hands. That evening, James forwarded confirmation. Possession secured. Transfer scheduled for morning. I didn't celebrate. I made dinner. Something simple. Ate standing up. Megan sent one last message. You think this makes you strong? I typed back. It makes me finished. I blocked the number and set the phone down. Somewhere across town, lawyers were scrambling. Calls were being returned that shouldn't have gone unanswered. Narratives were being rewritten in real time. None of it required my attention, because the truth about leverage is simple. You don't need to raise your voice when the math already agrees with you. I went to bed early not because I was tired, but because there was nothing left to monitor. Everything that needed to move was already moving precisely without me standing over it. In the morning, I would sign exactly one document. Not as revenge, not as punishment, as closure. The handcuffs didn't click loudly when they closed around Megan's wrists. They never do. Movies get that wrong. Real ones sound final, not dramatic. She walked between two officers through the hotel lobby, heels in her hand. Now hair coming undone in a way she'd never allow if she had a choice. People stared, then looked away. Reputation collapses faster than buildings. No dust, just distance. My mother pushed through the small crowd near the entrance, breathless, coat half on, eyes wild. Megan, she cried. An officer stepped in front of her. Ma'am, please stay back. She turned and saw me. For a moment, she didn't recognize me. Or maybe she did, and that was the problem. Sarah, she said. Dropping to her knees on the marble floor like gravity had suddenly doubled. Please, don't do this. I stopped walking. She grabbed at my coat fingers, shaking. I'll fix everything. We'll sell the house. We'll make it right. I gently removed her hand. You already did sell the house. Her face crumpled. Then take me instead. She needs help. Megan didn't look back. She stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, eyes empty. This isn't about punishment, I said. It's about consequences. My mother sobbed loud enough that a few people shifted uncomfortably. I didn't mean for it to go this far. You meant for it to be convenient, I said. This is just what that looks like. She shook her head. Family doesn't do this. Family doesn't fake illnesses, I replied. An officer cleared his throat. We need to move. Megan paused, then finally turning her head. Her eyes met mine, searching for something. Sympathy, regret, control. You won't hear from me again, she said. I know, I said. They led her out through the doors, the sound of traffic swallowing the moment whole. My mother stayed on the floor a second longer, then stood slowly like her body was older than she remembered. Where will I go, she asked. I thought about answering, about offering options, about smoothing the landing. I didn't. You'll figure it out, I said. You always do. I walked outside into the morning air. A black military vehicle waited at the curb, engine idling. General Harrison stood beside it, hands behind his back, posture relaxed but alert. Ready? He asked. Yes, I said. My mother followed me out, desperation flaring again. You're just leaving. I turned to her one last time. You asked me to disappear. She opened her mouth. I'm just doing it properly, I finished. I stepped into the vehicle without looking back. The door closed with a solid, unremarkable thud. As we pulled away, the hotel shrank in the window. The banners were still up. The illusion hadn't caught up with reality yet. The general sat across from me. Your file never closed, he said. We classified your absence as unresolved. I needed distance, I said. You got clarity, he replied. He slid a slim folder toward me. No fanfare, no pressure. Your role will be advisory, language, cultural risk, nothing ceremonial. I opened it. Familiar frameworks, updated, improved. Work that mattered. I don't need my rank back, I said. He nodded. We know. The road stretched ahead, clear and unremarkable. No music, no speeches, just motion. I thought about the version of myself who stood in Megan's kitchen, pretending not to hear the truth. The one who was told she was adaptable like it was a flaw. Adaptable meant I survived. The vehicle turned onto the highway, merging smoothly. I didn't check my phone. There was nothing left to say. What people rarely tell you is that walking away isn't loud. It doesn't feel like victory. It feels like relief without permission. I hadn't won a war. I'd ended one. The general glanced at me. Any regrets? I considered it. I regret waiting. He smiled slightly. Most do. The city faded behind us, replaced by open road and a sky that didn't care about family names or bank accounts. I straightened in my seat, feeling something settle that had been restless for years. Not anger, not triumph, alignment. So let me ask you this: if the people who taught you loyalty used it to keep you small, would you still call walking away betrayal, or would you finally call it self-respect? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if stories about quiet justice and earned freedom resonate with you, make sure to subscribe for more. I grew up believing loyalty was simple. You show up, you don't complain, you take care of your own even when it costs you something, especially when it costs you something. That idea is baked into a lot of families. It sounds noble, it sounds strong, and for a long time I wore it like a badge. What no one tells you is that loyalty, when it's never questioned, can turn into a tool. And once it does, it stops protecting you. It starts controlling you. For years I thought being loyal meant being flexible, adaptable, the one who could handle pressure without making noise, the one who didn't need praise because you're strong, the one who stepped in when things got messy so others didn't have to. At first, that role feels important. You feel needed, useful, trusted. But slowly, without anyone announcing it, loyalty turns into expectation, then into entitlement, then into silence yours. I didn't lose my career because I wasn't competent. I lost it because I was predictable. I was the person everyone assumed would absorb the damage and keep going. That's the moment loyalty stops being a virtue and starts being a weapon. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people avoid. If your loyalty is unconditional, someone else will eventually put conditions on their respect. And it's rarely the loud, obvious kind of disrespect. It's subtle. It shows up as jokes, as assumptions, as decisions made without consulting you because you'll understand. You become the person everyone leans on but never listens to. A lot of people watching this know exactly what that feels like. You're the one who fixes things, covers gaps, handles emergencies, keeps the peace. And when you finally ask for something, time, space, fairness, you're told you're being difficult. That's not love. That's dependency with good branding. One of the hardest lessons I had to learn was this. Loyalty doesn't mean access without accountability. Healthy loyalty moves both ways. It protects everyone involved. It doesn't require you to erase yourself to prove you care. If your loyalty is rewarded only when you're useful, then what they value isn't you. It's your function. And functions can be replaced. People often ask why I didn't speak up sooner, why I stayed quiet, why I kept helping even when it was clearly hurting me. The answer is simple and uncomfortable. Because silence was cheaper than conflict. Because I was taught that harmony mattered more than honesty. Because walking away felt like failure. But staying was costing me something more expensive than pride. It was costing me agency. Here's something I want you to hear clearly. You don't owe loyalty to people who punish you for having boundaries. Boundaries are not ultimatums. They're instructions. They tell people how to stay in your life without damaging it. When someone reacts to a boundary with anger, guilt, or threats, they're not upset about losing you. They're upset about losing control. That realization changes everything. It changes how you hear phrases like, "After everything I've done for you," or "family doesn't do this," or "you're selfish for thinking about yourself." Those aren't arguments. They're pressure tactics. Real loyalty doesn't require you to stay small. It doesn't ask you to sacrifice your future so someone else can feel comfortable in the present. Walking away from that dynamic doesn't mean you don't value family. It means you value yourself enough not to be consumed by it. And let me be clear about something else. You don't need permission to stop participating in your own erosion. A lot of people wait for a dramatic moment, an apology, a confession. Some clear signal that leaving is justified. That moment rarely comes. Closure isn't something other people give you. It's a decision you make when you realize the cost has become unacceptable. For me, loyalty had turned into a one-way contract I never agreed to sign. Ending it wasn't betrayal, it was revision. So if you're listening to this and recognizing yourself, I want you to ask a few honest questions. If you stopped helping tomorrow, would they still respect you? If you said no without explaining yourself, would you still be welcome? If you succeeded quietly and independently, would they celebrate or feel threatened? Those answers tell you everything you need to know. Loyalty is powerful, but only when it's chosen freely, not extracted through guilt or fear. And sometimes the most loyal thing you can do to yourself is step away from people who only love you when you're convenient. So here's my question for you. Have you ever stayed loyal to someone who would never have done the same for you? And if you're honest, what has that loyalty really cost you? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if this resonates, stay with the channel. There are more stories and more truths that don't get told often enough. For most of my life, I was underestimated before I ever opened my mouth. Not loudly, not cruelly, just casually, like it was obvious. People saw how I dressed. They saw how little I spoke. They saw the role I didn't advertise. And they filled in the rest with assumptions that made sense to them. I used to think being underestimated was a disadvantage, something to fix, something to outgrow. I was wrong. Being underestimated is only a weakness if you believe their version of you. Once you stop trying to correct it, it becomes leverage. Here's what most people don't understand: when someone underestimates you, they relax. They stop guarding information. They speak freely. They take shortcuts. They assume you won't notice. And that's when you see everything. In the military, the loudest person in the room is rarely the one with real authority. Authority doesn't need to announce itself. It watches. It waits. It acts when the outcome is already decided. That lesson applies far beyond uniforms and briefing rooms. In families, workplaces, and social circles, the underestimated person often has the clearest view. They're not invited into ego contests. They're not distracted by performance. They're allowed to observe patterns others miss. But here's the key difference most people miss. There is a difference between silence caused by fear and silence chosen as strategy. Silence from fear feels heavy. It shrinks you. It makes you hope you won't be noticed. Strategic silence does the opposite. It creates space. It gives you time. It lets you gather information without revealing intent. I didn't stop speaking because I had nothing to say. I stopped speaking because I didn't need to. When people assume you're harmless, they tell you the truth without realizing it. They show you who they are when they think you don't matter enough to remember details around. That's not an insult. That's access. A lot of people burn energy trying to change how they're perceived. They explain themselves, over-justify, over-perform. They want to be seen as capable so badly that they expose every move before it's ready. The problem is, once people see you as a threat, they start protecting themselves from you. Being underestimated buys you time to build skills quietly, time to understand systems, time to prepare without interference. I never corrected my sister when she mocked my work. I never defended my intelligence in rooms where people laughed. Not because I agreed with them, but because correcting them would have cost me the advantage. You don't win by convincing people you're smart. You win by letting them act like you're not. Here's a hard truth. The moment you demand respect, you give up leverage. Respect that has to be argued for is unstable. Respect that arrives after results is permanent. People ask why I didn't speak up sooner, why I didn't reveal everything the moment I knew. The answer is simple. Timing matters more than volume. If you speak too early, you look emotional. If you speak without proof, you look reactive. If you speak while the system still protects them, you look expendable. But when you wait until the facts line up, until the consequences are already moving, your words don't need force. They land on their own. Being underestimated taught me patience. And patience is power most people don't recognize until it's too late. This doesn't mean you tolerate abuse. It doesn't mean you disappear. It means you stop wasting energy trying to perform intelligence for people who have already decided not to see it. Instead, you invest that energy where it compounds. Skills, credentials, financial independence, legal clarity, things no one can laugh away. One day the room changes. Not because you announced yourself, but because circumstances force people to look again. And when they do, you don't need to explain the gap between who they thought you were and who you are. They feel it. That moment isn't loud, it isn't cinematic, it's quiet and uncomfortable and irreversible. And here's the part no one prepares you for. When people realize they underestimated you, they rarely apologize. They rewrite history instead. They say they always knew. They claim they helped shape you. That's fine. You don't need their acknowledgement anymore, because by then, their opinion no longer carries weight. So if you're listening to this and you've been overlooked, dismissed, or treated like background noise, I want you to consider something. What if being underestimated isn't the obstacle but the cover? What if the reason you're not being challenged is because no one sees the move you're preparing? You don't have to correct their assumptions. You just have to outgrow them quietly. And when the moment comes, you won't need to raise your voice. The situation will speak for you. So let me leave you with this question. If no one around you expected anything from you right now, what could you build without interference? And what would happen if you stopped trying to prove yourself and started preparing instead? If this resonates, stay with the channel. The most powerful moves are rarely the ones everyone sees coming. There's a moment people expect after a story like mine. They expect forgiveness. They expect reconciliation. A quiet phone call, maybe a tearful conversation where everyone admits their mistakes and promises to do better. They expect me to say that holding on to anger was heavy, and forgiveness set me free. That moment never came. And I want to be very clear about this, I'm not angry. And I didn't forgive them. Those two things can exist at the same time. We live in a culture that treats forgiveness like a moral requirement, as if healing is only legitimate once you've absolved the people who hurt you. As if peace can't exist unless you reopen doors that nearly crushed you the first time. That idea keeps a lot of people trapped, because forgiveness is often confused with responsibility relief. It's offered not to repair harm, but to erase discomfort, especially for the people who caused it. I didn't need forgiveness to move forward. I needed clarity. Closure doesn't come from apologies. It comes from decisions. For a long time, I thought closure meant understanding. I thought if I could just get them to explain why they did what they did, something would click. The pain would soften, the confusion would settle. That's a lie many of us tell ourselves. Some people don't have explanations that bring peace. They have patterns, and patterns don't resolve with conversation, they repeat. Closure isn't about them finally seeing your side. It's about you no longer needing them to. The day I stopped imagining the conversation where everything made sense was the day I actually moved on. I didn't cut contact because I was bitter. I cut contact because I was done negotiating reality with people who benefited from distorting it. There's an uncomfortable truth most people avoid. Forgiveness is optional, self-respect is not. You are allowed to say, "This hurt me," without adding, "but I understand." You are allowed to leave without granting emotional absolution. You are allowed to protect your peace without justifying it. A lot of people stay connected to harmful relationships because they confuse distance with cruelty. They worry about being seen as cold, unforgiving, or heartless. But here's what I learned: distance is not punishment. It's protection. Closure doesn't require confrontation. Sometimes confrontation just keeps the wound open longer. I didn't need my sister to admit she was wrong. The consequences already said enough. I didn't need my mother to apologize. Her choices were clearer than any words she could have offered. I stopped waiting for accountability to feel fair. Fairness isn't a prerequisite for peace. What finally brought closure wasn't forgiveness. It was acceptance. Not acceptance of what they did, but acceptance of who they are. Once you accept that someone is unwilling or unable to change, the struggle ends. You stop trying to extract something they don't have to give. You stop revisiting old conversations in your head. You stop drafting messages you'll never send. You stop hoping the next interaction will be different. That's closure. It's quiet, it's anticlimactic, and it's permanent. People sometimes ask if I ever miss them. I miss who I thought they were. I miss the version of family I hoped I had. But I don't miss the reality. There's a difference. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without needing resolution from the source of the pain. And here's the part that matters most. You don't owe access to people just because they share your history. Shared DNA is not a lifetime contract. Shared memories don't override ongoing harm. You're allowed to outgrow people, even the ones who raised you, even the ones who share your last name. Walking away isn't an act of anger, it's an act of honesty. Honesty about what you can tolerate. Honesty about what you deserve. Honesty about the cost of staying. Closure isn't about ending the relationship in a way that feels good to everyone. It's about ending it in a way that allows you to breathe again. And once you reach that point, forgiveness becomes irrelevant. Not because you're holding on to resentment, but because you're no longer carrying the weight at all. So if you're listening to this and struggling with the pressure to forgive someone who hasn't changed, ask yourself this. Are you trying to forgive for your peace or for their comfort? And if letting go doesn't require reopening the door, would you finally allow yourself to choose distance without guilt? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if stories about boundaries, self-respect, and quiet justice resonate with you, don't forget to subscribe. Some endings don't need forgiveness, just clarity and the courage to move forward.
Final note. This story is a work of fiction created by artificial intelligence to heighten drama and emotion. But the valuable lessons we discuss are entirely real and continue to happen to many people every day. If this style isn't for you, that's perfectly okay. Please feel free to look for other content that better suits your needs.